Welcome, everyone. My name is Bethany Eigel. I'm an associate specialist in the Learning and Organizational Development Unit at Virginia Cooperative Extension, and I am pleased to welcome you to day two of our 2026 virtual summer school series, Retention Through the Employee Cycle. Virtual Summer School is co-hosted annually by the Southern Region Program Leaders Network Program and Staff Development Committee and the National Association of Extension Program and Staff Development Professionals. Today's session is entitled Mentoring Matters: How Intentional Actions Can Shape New Extension Professionals. Our presenter is Dr. Amy Harder, Professor and Associate Dean and Associate Director for Extension at the University of Connecticut, where Dr. Harder has been since 2023 after 16 years at the University of Florida. Dr. Harder has been recognized as a senior fellow by the Association of International Agricultural and Extension Education. She was also awarded the Distinguished Extension Educator and Distinguished Researcher honors from the American Association for Agricultural Education. Goodness, that's quite an intro. Welcome to you, Dr. Harder. We're pleased to have you today.
Well, thank you everybody for the invitation. I certainly love talking about extension and I love talking about mentoring, and so it's a good opportunity to get to do both of those things. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. I want to give everybody a preview of what we're going to talk about today and sort of set some expectations. First, I'm combining a little bit of research and mentoring theory into what I hope are going to be some opportunities for us to talk about how we can apply research and theory in our own extension systems. And so in general, we're going to cover why mentoring matters, three functions of mentoring, what constitutes a good mentor, four stages of mentoring, and then we're going to mush it all together to make it make sense for what we can do with our own extension organizations. To think about why mentoring matters. Back in 1985, there was some work done by Smith and Beckley out of the Ohio State University, and it's the first known article about mentoring in extension that I could find. Organizations do use mentoring for many reasons. Now recognizing that the mentoring benefits are not just limited to the person being mentored, who I will call the protege. I know some systems refer to them as mentees. But we now know that mentors have a lot to gain out of mentoring relationships as well. If we think about our new employees, they're gaining emotional support, technical support, personal growth, professional growth, and ideally career development. We often say that it takes at least a year for new extension professionals to begin feeling confident, but hopefully mentoring can help speed up the rate at which that occurs. For a long time, the mentoring research really only focused on what the benefits were for the proteges, and they really sort of neglected what were the benefits to the other people involved. And so the good news is that more contemporary research shows that mentors really benefit from being involved in mentoring as well. They can gain personal satisfaction, they can gain new perspectives. This is particularly important and relevant when it comes to technologies. I know in our own organization, we're talking a lot about generative AI, and it is very commonly some of our early career professionals who are most active and engaged in tinkering with AI, and what does that mean, and what are its possibilities for extension. And so having the opportunity to be a mentor can be particularly important for employees who are looking for more leadership opportunities in extension, but are not necessarily wanting to commit or able to commit to having a more formal administrative role. Extension itself benefits from high quality mentoring because we have reduced turnover, improved organizational performance, and increased employee commitment, which are all things that we want to see in extension systems. Realistically, hiring new extension employees continuously is also really costly. It's expensive both in terms of the cost to our existing employees, who often are asked to pick up extra responsibilities to make up for the gaps in service that are created. But it's also financially expensive. Every time we have to hire somebody new, we incur financial costs for running new search processes. Unfortunately, extension does seem to have a higher turnover rate than what we would expect for positions of our type. And this is something that can be compared to some of the federal data information sources about career services, career types, and longevity. So we do have some work to do in extension. It does seem to me like a no-brainer that extension should be running mentoring programs and that doing so would have a positive impact. Unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of our mentoring programs fail to accomplish the goals that they set out to achieve. Back in 2020, I worked with colleagues from four land-grant universities, Doctors Narayan, Binge, Denny, and Carpenter, because we all share an interest in developing better mentoring programs. And at that time, what we really wanted to know was whether or not having a formal mentor was better at impacting organizational commitment of new extension employees than simply just having a really good relationship with a coworker. Organizational commitment is the idea of how much a person identifies with Extension as an organization and how much of themselves they're willing to give for the organization's benefit. So, ideally, in Extension, we really want people who identify with Extension, they see it as part of who they are. They're willing to go above and beyond for the organization's benefit, and that's an important part of a healthy organizational culture. And so, we were interested, are mentors or coworkers more effective in influencing that? So, to ask that question, we designed a study where we asked 217 early career agents, and I will use agents because that's the nomenclature that we used in Florida when I was working there. I know agents, educators, professionals, coordinators. For the purposes of this presentation, please know they all mean directly working with clientele. We asked early career agents across Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi to tell us about their relationships with their formal mentors, their best liked coworkers, and their sense of organizational commitment. The mentors themselves were rated on three functions that a mentor should demonstrate, which are role modeling, career development, and psychosocial support. And these functions come from research conducted in the 80s and the 90s and are commonly used in mentoring research. The first function of mentoring is role modeling, which is exactly what you would think of when you hear the term. So, good mentors should demonstrate the behaviors, attitudes, and skills desired for the extension system for which they work. Those norms may not be identical from system to system, but the point is, whatever that ideal looks like, hopefully mentors are modeling those behaviors. At the most basic level, this could be modeling norms related to what's appropriate for professional attire, but could also include more complex demonstrations of how to navigate conflict, manage clientele expectations, and the ever popular one we have in extension, what's it look like to try to maintain a healthy work-life balance? The second function of mentoring is career development. Good mentors help their proteges build the skills and experiences they need for career success. They advocate for opportunities for their proteges. They link them with the professional networks, and we certainly have a lot of those available to us in extension, and they guide them towards appropriate challenges. In extension, very often this looks like coaching proteges with consideration of the promotion process and what types of activities count in packets. The third function is psychosocial support, which is probably the most misunderstood role of a mentor. Mentors who excel at providing psychosocial support, they're very good at building trust and strong interpersonal bonds with the person that they're mentoring. They provide counsel and friendship. And in short, they're the kind of person that you want to go to and share your concerns, and you will feel safe and like the things that you say will be taken seriously and that your confidence will be honored. And so a good mentor is going to execute all three of these functions at a really high level. So I would love if people would use the chat box to share your thoughts in response to the question, do you think mentor or coworker relationships are more important to the organization and why? Okay, we're starting to see some responses come in. We've got some votes for coworkers, lots of votes for coworkers, Some people on the fence can't decide. Ooh, some arguments coming in for the mentors. I like that. Coworkers day to day, mentors long term. Definitely people are talking about the importance of morale and trust. So I think those are all definitely legitimate arguments for why a coworker or a mentor might be important. Um, we've just got a comment about different types of social relationships. And then somebody's sharing, if you've got an amazing mentor, if you have no relationships with coworkers, it will throw off your work life. Certainly, it is always more fun if you like the people you work with. And so if we take some of these thoughts, we can go ahead and compare them to what our early career agents actually told us. So if you were on Team Coworker, you chose really wisely. We asked early career agents to rate the quality of the relationship with their best liked coworker using something called the Coworker Member Exchange, which is an adaptation of something called the Leader Member Exchange. What we found was that our early career agents in Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi, which are all states that have formal mentoring programs, they tended to perceive that they had high quality relationships with their best liked coworker. Unfortunately, they were also much less likely to have impactful relationships with their formal mentors. The only function for which agents slightly or somewhat agreed their mentors were performing well was role modeling. And this is positive for new employees to learn new organizational rules and integrate into the norms of the system, but it neglects the important aspects of career development and psychosocial support, which we know are associated with those positive outcomes for mentors, proteges, and the organization. Additionally, neither the coworkers nor the mentors were significantly neither one of those relationships significantly impacted the new agent's perceived level of organizational commitment. So that was a little depressing for us, to be honest. That wasn't what we hoped to learn, but there was some good news. There was one action that mentors could take to improve how their proteges perceive them, and that it had a positive impact across every mentoring behavior. So positively impacted role model perceptions of role modeling, perceptions of career development, and perceptions of psychosocial support. And that one action was frequency of contact. And so the simplest answer to how to improve mentoring relationships is more communication. And this seems super obvious, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things that we do. What we did learn through this study was that perceptions of mentoring relationships statistically improve when the frequency of interactions between the mentor and the protege increase. And so agents who interacted with their mentors more often believe their mentors did a better job. And I've often heard people say, if they're serving as mentors, that the belief is, well, if my protege needs me, they'll go ahead and reach out to me. I've told them I'm available. But that's not good enough. New agents have shared they don't reach out to their mentors because they don't want to bother them. They feel like they are a burden on the person that they are mentoring, and that is exacerbated by perceptions of how busy everyone always appears to be in extension. And so we have these new agents and these early career agents who want help and need help, but feel like they can't ask for it because it will cost their mentor something. And ironically, if you like your mentor more, you might be less likely to ask a question because you want to really be respectful of their time that they need to do other things. But that's a really unfair situation to put our proteges in, and it does very little to help them on their way to success. And so we are fortunate to know that increasing frequency of contact can improve mentoring relationships. And so just a real quick question for the chat. How often do you think mentors and proteges should be in contact with one another? Okay, so we have a lot of people who are voting for weekly and monthly. Ooh, here's a quarterly. We ask our mentor-mentee pairs to meet monthly, but be in contact as needed in addition to that. So I think if I were to take a very non-scientific guess, most people seem to have settled on monthly, which seems really reasonable. What we found in a subsequent study in 2021 is that the sweet spot is actually 2 to 3 times a month. That's when the early career agents reported the best outcomes with interaction with their mentors. And so for such an approach to work, extension systems also have to carefully assess who are they asking to serve as mentors and to be honest about the amount of time it takes to be a really good mentor. And that can be a challenge because we often ask our people because they're really excellent at programming, but being really excellent at programming increases the likelihood that that person may already have a very full workload. We also need to build in the opportunity for people who are asked to serve as mentors to go ahead and say no and have that be respected. And that can be really difficult in small systems like mine because we just have a smaller pool of experienced extension professionals available. And so if every one of my experienced extension professionals says no because they're busy and they're doing great things, that really puts our organization in a tough spot. And so just because something's more difficult doesn't necessarily make it impossible, but it means we need to be more creative and flexible in the mentoring systems that we create. Because what we really need more than anything is mentors who are excited and have the capacity to integrate mentoring into their responsibilities. That way we increase the odds that the relationship goes well from the very beginning. Group discussion. How can we increase the frequency of contact without overburdening our mentors? There aren't right answers to this one. Well, there's probably, I should reframe that. I am hopeful we will find some answers that are really good ones. They're definitely not bad ones. Now, so provide some examples and ideas for people to work with. This is another one, guide mentors with ideas for outreach. Ooh, have a mentor contract. I saw that come up. I like this low-key approach, eating lunch together, connecting on a walk. That's absolutely right. Not everything has to be a meeting. People around here will hear me say it all the time. If there's a way that we can avoid having a meeting, we will definitely do that. Varying types of contact doesn't have to be a full hour conversation, Teams message, kudos. I saw earlier somebody mention one person per mentor. I haven't seen it on here, but something that I've been considering for a system like ours is whether or not we actually need to build this into dedicated program time. Because if we recognize that we do have limitations on how much time a person can spend on anything, if we say being a county extension director or a county coordinator is worth X percentage of your time, if we want somebody to do really well at mentoring, maybe we need to put similar parameters around that so people can report against the time that they spend on mentoring in the same way. I am not a huge fan of packets driving what people do or driving what we do in extension, but realistically, if we are functioning in a system where packets very often do dictate what people prioritize, organizationally, we could probably do more to build in opportunities for recognition for the time and effort it takes to be an excellent mentor. I think these are all great ideas, but it is one of the biggest barriers we have is helping people figure out how do I make mentoring fit? Because if you want to do it and you have good intentions, but you keep encountering barriers to who do I let down, my program clientele or my protege, that's a really tough situation for our mentors to be in. And so we have to try to do as much as we can to reduce that friction and reduce those barriers. So we're going to move to the next slide. I want to talk for a minute about what mentors think about their own work, because the last study we talked about what early career agents thought about their mentors. And so we flip this around in a study that was published in 2024, but we actually conducted it in 2022. And we were trying to answer the question of how do mentors perceive their own abilities? So we heard from about 50 agents who serve as formal mentors for the UF IFAS extension system, which is where I worked at the time. And one of our primary goals was for agents to assess the degree to which they agreed or disagreed that they performed a list of 10 mentor function behaviors that align with the 3 mentor functions that we've been discussing so far. So that list included things like I help my protege coordinate professional goals, my protege shares personal problems with me, or I model positive behavior for my protege. And so the surveyed mentors believed that they were doing a really strong job with role modeling and career development, but they were much less likely to agree that they were feeling comfortable performing the psychosocial support function. And so what we saw was that a gap existed between what was happening in their mentoring relationships and what we would ideally want to observe from successful mentoring relationships. So the results from the mentors partly supported what the new agents had reported, which is that the new agents, the proteges, they're not getting enough psychosocial support out of their mentoring relationships. Additionally, we did ask mentors what they wanted, what would be helpful, how could we better support them as they sought to do those 3 roles really well, perform those 3 functions really well. And what they reported actually mirrors what some of you had just suggested in our last discussion item, which is they wanted more professional development from the extension system to help them succeed. They really wanted in-service trainings, but they also wanted informational resources. They asked for checklists. What should I be talking about with my protege? What do I need to make sure they're doing to be on track and headed towards success? What are calendars of important dates that I need to be aware of that I should talk to my protege about? Things like awards deadlines or conference submission deadlines, or going back to the idea that packets are important in a lot of systems. What's the timeline for somebody who's going up for their first third-year review, or the timeline for putting in that first packet? They wanted better access to organizational policies, especially policies that relate to success. And at the time in Florida, I was sending out what I called monthly mentor emails. Those monthly mentor emails were quick tips that mentors could use that aligned with these 3 functions. And they specifically included suggested topics for discussions that people could have every month with their proteges based on what was going on at that time of the year. And our mentors liked those and wanted those to continue. So I did see somebody had suggested, can we give mentors suggested topics for what to talk about with proteges? Our evidence would suggest that yes, mentors very much do appreciate, want, and benefit from when extension systems can provide them with more structured support. I know not everybody on this call is a program and staff development professional, but if you are one, or if you're an administrator and you have a PSD employee or team, we really do need to make sure that our systems are well equipped with the appropriate resources available to support both our new employees, but also the experienced employees who are asked to mentor them. So we've heard a little bit from the early career professionals about what they thought about mentoring and their coworkers, and we did ask the mentors what they thought of their own performances. But when it really gets down to things, what does an effective mentor look like to you? What's an effective mentor do? How do they act? Or what's something that if you had a great mentor, what did they do that particularly was meaningful to you? Go ahead and use the chat to share your thoughts. And we see some comments about trust and support. Ooh, I like this one. It goes back to what we were talking about with the psychosocial support. A mentor who makes you feel like that there aren't dumb questions and that you can call anytime. That's so important. Ooh, I like this as well. We've talked about setting mentors up with the right resources, but somebody just commented that there has to be a point where you can send your proteges on their own way to solve some of their own problems. which is a nice precursor for what we're going to get to when we talk about stages of mentoring. We've got some suggestions about listening, being good thought partners. Ooh, someone whose path I would like to follow. I like that. I will tell you that when I was a master's student in extension education, uh, when I became a faculty member, my greatest goal was if I could be even a percentage as cool as Dr. Rask, who was my master's advisor, had been, I would be crushing it. He was just so good and definitely a role model for what I wanted to emulate as an extension education faculty member. So I think for out of things that people are listening, that's definitely one that speaks to me in my experience with mentors as somebody whose path I want to emulate. We've got knowledgeable represents the values of the organization. I think that's a really important component as we think about who should be serving as mentors. Um, Sometimes it's tough because somebody might be really good at what they do, but maybe they're in a tough spot in their career. Maybe they're a little burned out, and maybe they're not as good of a reflection of the organization as they used to be. Mentoring can go one of two ways. Mentoring might help them find their spark again, if we want to borrow from 4-H, but it may also be an opportunity for them to sort of drag their protege into a negative cycle that doesn't have anything to do with the early career agent themselves. And so I do think there's a really good assortment of responses here, but definitely a lot of ideas centered around trust, communication, and aspiration. And so I want to compare that to what some of the research says about good mentors. So, one of the things that's important to recognize is that there is no perfect mentor, but definitely checking more of these boxes is going to be associated more typically with what we want to see out of somebody who's mentoring really well. Research has shown that good mentors are successful extension employees in their own right, but more than that, they're motivated to want to help others succeed and believe deeply in the mission of extension. Effective mentors are confident, they're caring, and they find personal satisfaction in helping their proteges. And so that's one of the really cool things is when you hear a mentor say, gosh, the person that I've been mentoring just hit this career accomplishment, and I'm more happy for them than what I was when I did it myself. So that's one of the things that we like to see when we have really good mentoring relationships. Good mentors also take their responsibility really seriously, and they seek out opportunities to develop their own skills, not just their skills as mentors, but skills that they can use to continue developing their own professional talents, knowing that as they improve, they can share that with the person that they're mentoring along with them. It's really important that we think about providing professional development and ongoing support for mentors, which can include things like state-sponsored options. A lot of states have the opportunity to hold in-service trainings, and those are really good. But if you're in a state that doesn't regularly do that, there are amazing opportunities, and the Southern region is one good demonstration of this. Although I also have to say, up in the Northeast, we're holding our own. You can do regional webinars, regional training opportunities, national webinars like this one. If you represent a state that maybe is trying to figure out how to do this on top of many other things, it's a really good investment to reach out, partner with, collaborate with both other state extension systems or the professional associations, so we can help our mentors develop, cultivate, and really exemplify these characteristics and values in their work. And when we do things like this that help us be focused and intentional, we will do a better job of helping support successful mentoring relationships. I alluded to the idea that it is, in fact, important to send our proteges out on their own at some point. In every good mentoring relationship, there gets to the point where the little birdie is at the edge of the nest, and we have to encourage them to fly. And so there are, in fact, 4 stages that people often associate with mentoring. And the important idea behind this is that healthy mentoring relationships aren't meant to last forever. Healthy ones progress through preparing, negotiating, enabling, and closure. And what we do in these 4 stages really should be a scaffolding process that leads to a positive culmination of the relationship. It's been said that the most important and most critical stage in the mentoring process is the first one. And so preparing for a successful mentoring relationship is very similar to ensuring a house has a solid foundation. Because if you don't, everything that's built upon it is at increased risk. In this stage, what happens is that mentors should be reviewing their system's existing mentoring resources, if those exist. Common examples do include things like mentoring handbooks and new employee guides. I saw Diane mention that that Ohio State shares information with people as part of orientation. Some states offer formal training opportunities for mentors to prepare them in their roles. If that is something that your state does, I certainly encourage you to take advantage of it if you're somebody who's looking at being a mentor. If you are in a state that offers mentoring but doesn't have an onboarding process for mentors, it's certainly something that if you can dedicate time and resources to doing it, it will have dividends in helping set this first stage from a strong foundational viewpoint. Additionally, stage one is where you want mentors to familiarize themselves with who they're going to be mentoring. That could be by reviewing somebody's CV or a bio sketch if your system happens to have a tool like that. If not, take advantage of what's available regionally and nationally to ask for examples and to gather resources. But doing homework at this stage can really make the following stages go much better. And I know for a fact that there are multiple states within the southern region that have comprehensive mentor materials and would be willing to share. For the protege, this isn't the get out of jail free stage either. The protege has to do work in this stage as well. The preparation time is when a protege should really be doing some self-assessment, and that can be guided if an extension system has a self-review checklist. That could be a competency assessment of this is what all new entry level professionals should know for that system. So somebody can assess this is where I'm at versus this is where I want to be. But it could also just be a checklist of items that they need to work towards over their first year. One of the things is that there's a very often used cliche, people don't know what they don't know. And so when we apply that to this scenario of how to help proteges be prepared in stage one, we really need to help provide those frameworks and those boundaries so people can think about what is it that they might not know they don't know. Proteges should also prepare themselves mentally for what their desires are for their new position and what concerns they have coming into that new role. It's very normal to come into a new role, even if it's not your first job in extension, and have some concerns, have some trepidation, have things you don't know. Pick me, ask me. I'm happy to tell you how concerned I was when I came to UConn, which was by no means my first job in extension. And I've got a year or two under my belt, but coming into a new position, I had to learn a new system. I had to learn a new role. I had entirely new networks. And so even if your protege is not brand new to extension, they are going to be bringing concerns with them in. If you are that protege, you have to be prepared to ask those questions and know that that's going to be okay. And that's why you have a mentor. I think it is also really important that we set up systems in which proteges feel empowered to advocate for having the right mentor. There is considerable debate about whether or not it's better to assign a mentor right away or to let them choose one after they've had time to get to know people. From my experience, I lean towards assigning a mentor right away. New extension employees often feel super overwhelmed in the early days on the job, and so providing them with a mentor sooner can help ease some of those feelings. An option for systems who would like their employees to have more input into the selection of their mentors could be to assign a temporary mentor for the first month or two and then transition to a more official mentor after that. Now, every university has slightly different regulations as well, but that would be a nice in-between option that would allow people to have more say over who they work with, but also ensure that they are prepared from the get-go with somebody they can go to with questions. In the study that I mentioned at the very beginning, where I worked with Dr. Carpenter from University of Georgia, I don't know if Georgia still does, but at the time they had a two-mentor system. Basically, one mentor was associated with the program, and one mentor was just sort of meant to be more on the psychosocial support side, just a general, I'm here with whatever you need, I'm happy to listen to you. People did tend to gravitate more towards their programmatic mentors in that study. Um, and I think that's sometimes because there are unique customs, cultures, traditions that go with the program area you're in. But I would also say more so than fitting program to program as the guiding rule, I would consider what does my system look like? And if in order to have a good program mentor, it means somebody has to be across the state because there's not somebody similar close by. You know, is that better or worse? I'd probably lean towards I would want somebody who can meet more frequently, be available more frequently as the leading factor over whether or not they share necessarily the same program area. Um, it's a little bit you make the best out of the scenario that you have. But I think from the perspective of somebody who might be making those arrangements, I would want to take into consideration if I know I'm assigning a mentor who doesn't share the same program area, what can I do to be intentional about making sure that new employee is getting some of those programmatic background features that their mentor may not be able to have them. So that might not mean that I ask a second person to be a formal mentor, but it might mean that I ask a program leader to schedule a couple extra meetings or to keep an eye out for that new employee, make sure they get invited to association meetings, or any other get together that a program area might have that the other mentor might not know about. There's definitely an art to mentoring relationships more so than a hard set of rules from my experience and definitely a little bit from what we see in the literature as well. Moving into stage two, this is the negotiation stage. Ideally, this doesn't last very long, but it is important. In the second stage, we have to make sure several things happen. First, we need to make sure that the mentor and the protege both understand their roles and responsibilities because neither should go into the relationship expecting to be a passive participant. I really like using a formal agreement for this process. I know multiple states do have formal mentoring contracts, mentoring agreements, mentoring frameworks, whatever you want to call it. But it's a written and signed statement that people acknowledge what they are supposed to do to make the relationship successful, what their roles are, what their responsibilities are. And when you have that, it really helps avoid misunderstandings that could occur further down the road when somebody was under a misperception about what they were supposed to do or what the other person was supposed to do. Second, the mentor and the protege really need to agree upon the goals they're going to work towards accomplishing together and how they'd like to work together. Often this really is going to focus on helping the new employee make it successfully towards their first promotion, but there should be many more smaller measurable goals that will contribute to achieving that big goal. And again, when those things are written down, although I would put the goal framework as more of a living document, that does help provide accountability and a source of commitment to each other that both parties are going to work towards some common outcomes. The second part of the stage is maybe the trickiest. In this calibrating the relationship stage, there's definitely at least four components that people need to think about, which are confidentiality, formality, meeting frequency, and scope. Mentoring is more prone to failure when people make assumptions about these types of things rather than make them explicit early on. These are primarily to make sure people both feel psychologically safe, but also helps anchor expectations for what the relationship's going to look like. And so on the confidentiality side, I think mentors have a duty and an obligation to be upfront with their protege. Will absolutely everything a protege tells them always be in confidence, or would there be situations where they would say, there may be times where you share something with me where I need to tell your supervisor so we can figure out how to help you together. having those conversations early on can be really helpful. In terms of formality, we saw this when we talked about how can we increase frequency of contact to 2 to 3 times a month. How much of that is going to be leaning on the structured side? How much of that is going to be more casual check-ins? I have, uh, even in advising graduate students, which I did a lot of in my formal job, I had students who were absolutely a-okay with just sticking their head in and saying, "Hey, good morning. Let me know if you need anything," or "Hey, good morning. I have a question for you." And then I had others who would say, "Nope, I want to meet every Thursday for 30 minutes at 3 o'clock." And it was just how everybody functions differently, and making sure people are on the same page is really important about that. Same thing in terms of meeting frequency. How much is it going to be on a regular schedule versus as needed? And then the last one really gets into where both the mentor and the protege have to feel safe in this relationship. And so if you as a mentor don't feel comfortable getting down into the weeds of your protege's personal life, it is okay to establish that as an early boundary. On the other hand, if you think sharing some details about your personal life or how you choose to balance life outside of work with life inside work would be really helpful to the relationship, that is okay if both parties agree. And so calibrating the relationship is a really important component of stage 2. Our third stage is probably my favorite because it's where the best things can happen when all goes well. So stage 3 is all about enabling the protege to be successful by providing active support and maintaining regular communication and helping navigate the issues and the tricky situations that arise, because inevitably tricky situations will arise. It's just the nature of being in a job that revolves around working with people. And when I reflect upon the best mentors who have helped me through my career, they were all exceptionally good at pushing me to creep beyond my comfort zone and help me find my opportunities to expand networks or to build my expertise. They were trustworthy, and it was clear they had my best interest in mind. And so that made this stage for me really, really enjoyable as a protege. And it's something I try to keep in mind and emulate as a mentor. For the program evaluators on today's webinar, you will also appreciate that stage 3 is the perfect time to build informative evaluation. So mentors and proteges should regularly monitor and evaluate progress towards the goals that were established back in that second stage. And practically, a natural time for this step is around the annual performance review, when proteges are more likely to be reflecting upon their progress anyhow. It's also a good time to discuss what's going well, what's not, and identify what benchmarks seem reasonable to achieve within the next year. So I mentioned that goal framework should be a living document. That's where changes and adaptations can be made to make sure that both parties are still trending in the direction of what they want to accomplish. And I would also strongly encourage mentors to use this time to make sure that their proteges are doing things to take care of themselves, such as taking vacation days, not setting unrealistic expectations on themselves, and establishing habits that will support that person's individual well-being over the long term. We really do have a long-standing problem in extension, and this includes every system I've worked in, that we have a culture that models and rewards behaviors that lead to burnout, rather than encouraging and applauding people who establish personal boundaries and personal priorities that can contribute to a healthy and productive long-time career. And so mentors can and should be part of changing this narrative. The final stage of mentoring is closure, and it can be a bummer. Stage 4 can really be difficult. Proteges can really feel like they're not ready to be cut loose yet, and mentors may feel like they are going to lose something by letting go. Using the goals that were established back in the second stage, though, can be the guide that helps make that process easier. When you sit down and you look at that list of what we wanted to accomplish at the beginning, and you can review and say, look, we said you were going to be ready when you got all these things done. Check, check, check. We have reached that point. You really are ready to fly and to leave the nest, and you are going to be amazing. And so sometimes universities do have kind of this abrupt endpoint. I know when I was at University of Florida, the regulation was that faculty would have a mentor until they went up for their first promotion. And At that point in time, the mentor was done. Um, that may not have matched that timeline that things look like in stage two, but it is a definitive closure point that can help adjust what progress looks like along the way. Um, the really good part about reaching the fourth stage is this is the part where it's a privilege. If you've accompanied somebody on their path to reaching this point of professional independence, that's something to celebrate both as the protege and the mentor. And it is really hard not to be proud when proteges go out and do great things. And and it's okay if the mentoring relationship doesn't lead to anything other than being good colleagues moving forward. But a lot of times, really successful mentoring relationships do evolve into valued friendships, and they look different, still continues to bring different kinds of benefits, even once that mentor protege relationship has ended. And so it may be an end of one phase of a relationship, but opens opportunities for whole new ones that are also pretty great. So when we bring it all together and combine all the things we've discussed today, there is a clear structure that emerges that can be adopted and adapted across different extension systems to support successful mentoring. My recommendations, we can use the four-stage model of mentoring to anchor expectations and establish a shared vision for how the relationship will move forward. We can set standards as an organization. How often should mentors be contacting and proteges be contacting mentors? So, what does that frequency of contact look like? Establish a guideline. Forced is a strong word, but definitely standards of frequency of contact can be integrated into a strong, successful mentoring model. We know how important communication is to all mentoring functions, but especially to improve what we have seen is our not great track record in the function of psychosocial trust. So really leaning in on providing some resources to help mentors be successful at performing this function. And then putting it all together. When we have people who know ahead of time, they're going to move through a multi-stage relationship. When they know ahead of time how that relationship's going to be conducted, what frequency is it going to occur, how much effort is involved, what do they need to do to really become that trusted, good, confident, effective mentor. That's where we'll see the long-term organizational commitment and retention. And while I might say in my role, like I want this to work because I would love if we always kept all of our amazingly talented new extension employees. That's my number one priority. But above and beyond that, extension works best when our people are happy and doing great things. And the whole point of extension is we have happy, talented people doing great things that are positively impacting their communities. And so for me, mentoring is one of our best strategies for an input we have, something that we can control, something we can contribute to that helps our communities get the expertise and resources they need. And that's really why we do what we do anyway. And so with all that in mind, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you to Dr. Harder. This has been such a valuable presentation, tons of information for us. And thanks to each of you for attending today's session of Virtual Summer School. We definitely appreciate any feedback you can provide to us on today's session. You can scan the QR code that's on your screen. And it just takes a couple minutes for you to share some suggestions. And even for next year's program, we'll be involved in the planning, and there's space for you to share any information that you might want to suggest to us in the survey.